Hey, so this video is going to be on communism and how it relates to atheism and how it does not relate to atheism. So let's get into it. This issue is actually relatively personal to me because I am not a communist, but I am, of course, an atheist. And I think this is a very, very important distinction that needs to be made because this is a very commonly attributed crime to atheists, is that we are one and the same as communists, as Barak Lurie writes in his book. So before I do anything, let's just do the horrible cliche of defining both of these ideologies really quickly. Communism, as defined by Merriam-Webster's dictionary, is as follows: a system in which goods are owned in common and are available to all as needed, a theory advocating elimination of private property. And I am not just a dummy quoting the dictionary, though. I have read the Communist Manifesto as well as read up on many communist revolutions. I'm well aware of the sum product of what communism has been thus far. It's probably the most influential ideology of the 20th century, so it's very, very noteworthy. Atheism, of course, is just the lack of belief in a god or deity as defined by the dictionary. And take it a little bit step further, it is also the lack of any religious practice, as well as maybe the opposition or abstinence from religious practices. At least I would add that latter part to it. But now to get into kind of some of the similarities between these two, I mean, it's quite obvious, as I mentioned, from reading the Communist Manifesto, that Karl Marx was an atheist, and he advocated for the elimination, or at least the reduction of religion within society. He infamously referred to it as the opium of the people. He mentioned that the church was generally, he believed, a force for keeping old ideas in place within society and needed to be done away with. In the dictatorship of the proletariat. And most communist revolutionaries acted on this. Most, if not all, communist revolutions were at least mostly established atheist states and promoted secular causes and did away with established churches. In particular, that of the Soviet Union, especially under Stalin, who was an atheist that fought very hard against the East Orthodox Church within the former Russia as it turned itself into the Soviet Union. However, that is about where the similarities between these two end. There's a great, great number of differences, one of which, just to start it off with, is that, as I mentioned, it is in the Communist Manifesto. However, it occupies, I would wager, at most 5 to 10% of the Communist Manifesto. At least 70% of the Communist Manifesto is dedicated mostly to the economic objectives of Marxism and of communism and of overriding the current system we have where the bourgeoisie are exploiting the proletariat, and the need for a violent revolution that will do away with this classist structure that we have that's arisen as of recently, as of since feudalism has faded away, and how this means of redistribution will result in a perfect state of communism after the dictatorship of the proletariat, in which we will all be equal, yada, yada, yada. Of course, that's not how it plays out, but that's how it's established in the Communist Manifesto. And I don't see how, well, first off, none of the economic objectives are not in any way related to atheism or to Christianity or to religion. You know, religious ideologies sometimes intertwine a little bit with economics, but they are an entirely different thing. They're a social issue. You know, the opposite of Marx's socialism would be some form of capitalism, such as that which advocated for by Milton Friedman, or any other similar thinkers to him, such as Adam Smith. It is, of course, Milton Friedman was actually relatively secular, though I don't know, I'd say he was a full atheist. So it just shows that, those two, capitalism does not necessitate to religion, and socialism does not necessitate to atheism, and even communism and Marxism does not necessitate and equate to atheism. Another part of it is the political aspect, which is still more than the religious aspect of the Communist Manifesto. It advocates for a dictatorship of the proletariat, which is, of course, a totalitarian regime. Again, I do not see any way that this directly relates to atheism or religion. There have been plenty of dictatorships, kings, and other, absolute entities throughout history that have operated under the form of some form of religion, be it Christianity, be it Islam, be it Buddhism. It's, neither one of these two religious ways of thinking have a monopoly on whether you can be a small government or whether you can be a big government system. I personally am a much more libertarian leaning atheist than the average atheist is. I'm very uncomfortable with using government to do too many things, including to get rid of religion. I do not think it should be used to get rid of religion. I think it should just be kept as a secular force that does not either promote or attack religion, but if anything, probably just stops maybe some of the most, obstructive religious practices. So, I mean, again, I just know personally that you don't have to necessarily favor a large government to be an atheist. Take Ayn Rand, just one last example before I go off on that. Ayn Rand. Ayn Rand was an atheist, and she obviously did not favor a large political government establishment. So, that's the last one. And again, then to get into kind of more of the other specifics of this, they of course want to take it a step further in Barak Lurie's book and say that the deaths caused by communism are directly attributable to atheism. Well, I mean, I can't, get too much into detail with this without covering each and every one of the acts of the dictators that have operated under the Communist Manifesto. And I'm going to kind of break that down dictator by dictator as I go throughout this book. And I already covered Stalin. But I mean, the bottom line, if you look at with almost all the dictators, the people who were killed in the name of their actions, most of them were not due to the religious convictions of the people in that country. It's definitely the case with Stalin. I don't know the exact numbers with Mao, but I know that the cultural revolutions that he did were much more heavily fueled by extreme xenophobia and nationalism than they really even were by communism. And though communism was a factor there, and some of the anti-free trade things that he did were much more, which of course led to many, many deaths, and the collectivization project that he and Stalin did. These were all radical Marxist economic initiatives, not religious or social projects. Now, I won't deny that there were deaths that happened in these regimes directly because of some of their secular atheistic thinking, such as Stalin's murder of the priests within the Eastern Orthodox Church. And as I said, I'm not going to go into the others right now because that'll be for other videos when I go into those dictators. But again, so basically the bottom line is that any direct correlations between atheism and communism are deeply flawed. And then to take the next step, as Barak Lurie does, and try to attribute the deaths of communism throughout history to atheism are simply just nonsensical, unless you want to attribute the deaths of every ideology that happened to also be aligned with Christianity, Islam, or some other religious system to that system's religion, which of course nobody would do. Nobody would attribute the deaths of the American South, that practiced Confederacy and the practices of slavery that went on with it and the war that it waged against the North. No one would attribute the casualties of the American Civil War to the fact that both sides were Christian. But for some reason, atheists always get this charge. So I don't know why that is. If you maybe have better ideas to it than I do, or other thoughts like that, feel free to put them in the comment section below. And other than that, just thanks for watching and see you next time. Bye.